wing and a prayer. Coming in on a wing and a prayer. Though there's one motor gone, we can still carry on. Coming in on a wing and a prayer. What a show, what a fight. Yes, we really hit our target for tonight. How we sing as we limp through the air. Look below, there's our field over there. With our full crew aboard and our trust in the Lord, we're coming in on a wing and a prayer.
How you doing?
It's Bruce. Joe got him one.
Okay.
Yeah. 349.
Oh, hey. All right.
So the one thing of World War I.
Very good. Oh, yeah. World War II veteran. Excellent. Very good. You'll end up on YouTube or on the internet. You'll end up on YouTube or on the internet.
You too are.
Oh, what do we have here? Oh, this is the reader crew. Absolutely the reader crew. No two ways about it. Immediately, some of the readers sitting in front, we got squawking hawks. There's only. From Sioux City? Who's on this phone?
349.
In Sioux. Oh my God! We're gonna have to scan this. I've never seen this shot before.
No, that's this one.
The dining room, to the airmen, it's a mess hall, is a place to visit, share a meal, and swap stories about their experiences during the war with the 10 people at their table. This was followed by a speaker who made a presentation about the 100th Bomb Group.
Letters were sent home by members of the 100th Bomb Group to their families from somewhere in England. They were not allowed to disclose their exact location. The following is one of those letters from Technical Sergeant Carmen Gallo, radio operator gunner.
On June 25th, 1943, the 100th Bomb Group flew its first official mission, taking off at 0617 hours with all their preparation, plans, and training for Bremen, Germany. The weather was bad after leaving the English coast. Extremely heavy flak was encountered, and there was strong opposition from enemy fighters, FW-190s and ME-109s. 3 of our aircraft never returned to the base. The 100th B-17s in formation, flying toward their target on September 11th. The Ruland mission was for 35 100th B-17s to take off between 7:40 and 8:10 from Thorpe Abbotts, fly towards Frankfurt, and rendezvous with the 55th Fighter Group's P-51 Mustangs, then change course to Rulands to bomb the synthetic oil refinery at around 12 o'clock. All hell broke loose. A ball turret gunner from the High Group reported, at 12:05 hours, the 100th C Squadron, in the low position, was attacked by approximately 50 to 70 enemy aircraft, FW-190s and ME-109s. The enemy aircraft came in a swarm from 6 o'clock, opening fire with 20 millimeters from 400 yards. The attack caused at least 3 of our aircraft to explode on the first pass, and most of the others appeared to be damaged. After this mass attack, a few single enemy aircraft broke away from the swarm and made a 360-degree turn and attacked our crippled aircraft from 6 o'clock low. In a few moments, all but one disappeared into the undercast. 2 chutes were seen before our aircraft disappeared. This diagram shows the formation of the 100's 35 B-17s on this mission. The lead group, 100A, had 2 aircraft severely damaged. The low group, 100C, lost all 12 planes, including the entire 350th Squadron. This painting depicts a German Focke-Wulf 190 fighter attacking a bloody 100th B-17 on September 11th, 1944. Sergeant Klutz rode this tail section down and survived. It crashed into a school, and after the war, the school was named after him. The tail section of a B-17 lost in this battle. The B-17 innocent bystander exploded after being attacked by German fighters. Lieutenant Rain, pilot, and Lieutenant Pitts, bombardier, along with most of the crew, died in the explosion. Lieutenant Carlton's crew in Our Baby Hutchie was shot down. Most of the men perished. Hardluck was shot down. The Lieutenant Giles' crew bailed out. All survived and became POWs till the end of the war. The crash site of the B-17 Hardluck 50 years later, prior to excavation by the museum. A Hardluck crew member examining the remnants of his aircraft. 60 years later, Ella Page views the remains of her brother's airplane. He was a ball turret gunner on one of the Bloody Hundreds B-17s shot down that day. After a good night's rest, there is nothing like a tasty breakfast with other airmen and their families. Then over to the PX to see the exhibits and share war stories.
Got about 70 vets that are here, so that's what you're looking to put in. Yep.
Oh, you signed that one. Okay, then hold off. This is all going to the foundation. This is 100% going back to the foundation. Now you know I have to have one. I've got 2 of his already. Yep, it will. That's what we're starting to see. People are going to be seeing this. This is going to be a hot commodity.
On the shuttle mission over Regensburg, they landed in Algeria, but they bought this little African ass, and they named him Mohammed. When they got airborne, 2 guys took off their jackets and shoved the front legs through one and the back legs through the other. And the guy sat in the waist with an oxygen mask crammed on little Mo's nose. And when they got back in the pattern around Thorpe Islands, Cowboy Road asked for priority landing, and they wanted to know what the problem was. He said, I got a frozen ass on board. So they got priority landing. Up at the end of the runway, the taxi strip, ambulance comes pulling up, and the people come climbing out, open the Bombay doors, handed little Mo down to the medics. Little Mo turned out to be Lady Mo, for one thing. And for the other, she had the run of the squadron area. And you'd come in late, and you might very well find Bo in your bed. You'd have to push her out so you could go to bed. She'd sniff around till she'd find another empty cot.
The PX had several items on display from the World War II period. It was interesting to see the computing instruments used by the navigator and the bombardier, and the type and amount of clothing that was required for the flight crews.
Although some people say he's just a crazy guy, to me he means a million other things. For he's the one who taught this happy heart of mine to fly. He wears a pair of silver wings. And though it's pretty tough, the job he does above, I wouldn't have him change it for a king's. An ordinary fellow in the uniform I love, he wears a pair of silver wings.
What George is putting on is a glorified electric blanket with arms and legs. It has connections on the wrist and ankles for electric gloves and booties. Most of the guys wore 2 pairs of wool socks. The wool socks were covered by an electric bootie, which was plugged into the electric suit at the ankles. All this was covered with the fleece-lined boots. The fleece-lined boots were a problem. If one had to bail out, they were not very good for hiking, and frequently they came off when the chute popped open. So many vets tied their combat boots to their parachute harness, just in case. Not shown here are the coveralls that were worn under the fleece-lined pants and jacket. An inflatable life vest and parachute harness were worn over their jacket. They wore goggles and a leather helmet which had earphones for communication with the rest of the crew. Oxygen masks were worn above 10,000 feet. At 30,000 feet, without oxygen, a man would pass out in 2 to 3 minutes and die a few minutes later.
Climbing high into the sun, here they come, zooming to meet our thunder. Adam boys, give her the gun. Down we dive, spouting a flame from under, off with one terrible roar. We live in fame or go down in flame. Boy, nothing can stop the Army Air Corps.
Daylight aerial bombing of Nazi Germany was the American strategy used to destroy their war-making capacity. Here on exhibit are newspaper clippings of some of the exploits of the 8th Army Air Force and 100th Bomb Group. Mementos on exhibit of well-known 100th Bomb Group airmen.
You'll never know just how much I miss you. You'll never know just how much I care. And if I tried, I still couldn't hide my love for you. You ought to know, for haven't I told you so a million or more times? You went away and my heart went with you. I speak your name in my every prayer.
It was quite a surprise when we saw a bomber jacket with the name The Latest Rumor. That was my dad's plane. This airman was on a different crew, which flew in The Latest Rumor sometime after my dad had completed all of his missions. My dad, Al Ariola, was the ball turret gunner on the Lieutenant Dilly's crew. The ball turret is located on the belly of a B-17 to defend from fighter attacks from below. The Dilly crew, each B-17 was identified using the pilot's last name, trained in Peyote, Texas. They crashed during training when their flight instructor feathered the engines at too low an altitude. The plane was badly damaged and their navigator was injured. After training, they flew a new B-17 from Omaha, Nebraska to Scotland via Bangor, Maine and Reykjavik, Iceland. B-17s were being modified for combat in Scotland. They received a modified aircraft and were assigned to the 100th Bomb Group at Thorpe Abbott Air Base in England. A new plane needs a name and they decided on The Latest Rumor, a name my dad suggested. From April 12, 1944 to July 25, 1944, they flew on 35 missions in 103 days. During this period, the required number of missions was raised from 25 to 30, and then after D-Day to 35. If they survived 35 missions, they got a Lucky Bastards Club certificate and were assigned to stateside duty. During this period, the average lifespan of a 100th Bomber crew was only 11 missions. The Dilly crew was shipped home on the Queen Elizabeth, the largest passenger ship in the world. Seeing the Statue of Liberty, they experienced not only a thrill, but a great sense of relief. The crew was sent to Shepherd Field, Texas for reassignment. They were split up, each assigned duty nearer their home. After a 2-week leave, my dad reported to Victorville, California. He was the non-commissioned officer in charge of the shooting range. My dad's Lucky Bastards Club certificate, issued by the 100th Bomb Group upon the completion of his 35 mission. The Latest Rumor survived the hostilities. However, while hauling relief supplies to the Germans after the war, a landing gear collapsed and she was unceremoniously pushed off the runway with a bulldozer and damaged beyond repair.
But this mission was just as costly and served as a grim reminder that the enemy was still determined to fight. The 100 found out the hard way. For the next hour, we will look at the Hamburg mission through the sight and sound and in the words of the men who were there.
At 8th Air Force fighter and bomber bases throughout East Anglia, teletype printers came alive on the afternoon of December 30th, 1944. Mission orders for the following day. After several weeks of modest activity due to poor weather conditions, the 8th Air Force was going to mount another maximum effort on December 31st to strategically strike several targets simultaneously. The 1st Air Division was assigned targets near the Bremen-Koblenz area. The 2nd Air Division was to strike targets near the Angers-Giddisch area, and the 3rd Air Division, which included the 100th Bomb Group, were assigned targets in and around the city of Hamburg. More specifically, as Mike mentioned earlier, the Grasbrook and the Wilhelmsburg synthetic oil refineries as a primary target, and the Blumenthal submarine pens as a secondary target. The following morning, December 31st, 1944, the 100th Bomb Group bomber crews at Thorpe Abbotts were awoken. They were served breakfast, which was followed by the mission briefing. 41 aircraft that flew from the base that morning were ready with the required fuel, ammunition, and general purpose demolition bombs. For the flight crews, they prepared for the mission by dressing into their flight gear and collecting their required flight equipment. For some, it would be the last day of their lives. Leading the mission that day was 349th Bomb Squadron Commander Major Charles Martin. Major Martin, along with pilot Don Jones, would command the lead squadron. Henry Kruger was command pilot of the High Squadron, along with his pilot, Charles Hong Kong Wilson. Ed Whitten would lead the low squadron. The 100th Bomb Group departed Thorpe Abbotts at 0647 to 0737 without any serious incidents. They were on time, and Major Martin set the group's course towards the North Sea. Hamburg, which had been ruthlessly bombed during the war, was still one of the major industrial cities and targets in the northern region of Germany and is located near the North Sea. Mission planners felt the safest and most strategic flight plan should be one that flew the group over the North Sea. This would prevent the 100th from being exposed to German flak gun placements over the continent and possible Luftwaffe fighter attacks for the least amount of time. Once the 100th Bomb Group climbed into formation altitude, they began to fly eastwards towards Fortress Europe. But there was a problem. As the 41-ship echelon climbed to 25,000 feet, they suddenly encountered a 140-knot tailwind. This pushed the force across the sea at a very rapid pace. The mission plan called for the force to fly to the north of Hamburg, then make a 90-degree turn to the south. That meant the bomb run was going to be from the north to the south. The problem came when the force turned south. What had been a 140-degree tailwind now became a vicious crosswind. To keep a tight formation became almost impossible for the 100th Bomb Group pilots. Pilots crabbed into the wind to try and keep the correct heading for a perfect bomb run. Bombardiers tried to desperately adjust their Norden bomb sights for the wind correction and drift. Suddenly, for the 100th Bomb Group, all hell broke loose. As the 100th Bomb Group approached the target area, a massive force of over 50 Luftwaffe fighters, consisting of Messerschmitt Me-109s and Focke-Wulf FW-190s from Jagdgeschwader JG-300 and Sturmstaffel Jagdgeschwader JG-1, including two Messerschmitt Me-262s from Jagdgeschwader JG-7, ruthlessly attacked the formation. German flak gunners zeroed in on the straggled group and cut loose with a deadly barrage of exploding, hot, jagged metal. In the lead squadron, Lieutenant Floyd Henderson was flying B-17G Flying Fortress 42-31066, Fools Rush In. To the left of the rear of the leader, Major Martin. Suddenly, a direct burst of flak struck Henderson's ship. The wounded Fortress uncontrollably rolled to the right and slid into the ship flown by Lieutenant Clifton Williams. The two fortresses slammed together and exploded. Out of the 20 crewmen aboard the two aircraft, only 6 bailed out to safety and were subsequent POWs. Also in the lead squadron was Lieutenant Wallace Wilson, flying in the right rearmost corner of the formation. Flying in B-17G Flying Fortress, Humpty Dumpty, the Wallace crew took a direct hit of flak, disabled the number 1 and number 4 engines. They began to windmill out of control, and Wallace was helpless to feather them due to the electrical failure. Wallace himself was severely wounded in his left calf. The order was given to bail out as the Luftwaffe swarmed around the stricken fortress. By the grace of a sheer miracle, all the crew members aboard bailed out safely and were subsequently captured and interned as prisoners of war for the remainder. As the battle raged on, the other 2 portions of the group were being attacked as savagely as the lead squadron. In the high squadron, 2nd Lieutenant William Mayo was flying in the rearmost portion of the element. Mayo was flying the 6th mission in B-17G 43-38381, Ain't Misbehavin' 2. After taking flak hits over Bremshaven, Mayo was forced to drop out of formation after losing his number 1 and number 4 engines. All 9 crewmen on the Mayo crew perished when their aircraft exploded and spun helplessly out of control. Flying next to Mayo was another rookie crew. 2nd Lieutenant Paul Carroll and his crew were both on their 4th mission. Their fortress took heavy flak hits after bombs away. Their aircraft dropped out of formation and went into a dive. Carroll gained control of the ship at 15,000 feet and ordered the crew to bail out. All members of the Carroll crew safely bailed out and became subsequent prisoners of war. Also flying in the high squadron was pilot John Morin and his crew. Morin was also flying in the rear portion of the squadron echelon in Cargo for Margo. After taking flak hits, Morin dropped out of formation. He was last heard over the VHF radio at 12:50 hours, informing the group that he had 2 crewmen aboard that were severely wounded. They had an hour of fuel remaining, and they were going to try and make Holland. All the crew but 1 escaped the crippled Fortless shortly after that transmission. 2nd Lieutenant Billy Blackman and his crew were also flying in the rear portion of the high squadron. Blackman was a popular pilot in the 418th Bomb Squadron. On December 31st, he was flying in B-17G Flying Fortress 43-38215, Brumlin, Bremen. After they released their bombs, Staff Sergeant Stanley Carson radioed to the flight deck that flames were coming out of the number 3 engine and oil was leaking profusely from the cowling. Sergeant Carson then told Blackman immediately feathered the engine. Carson then called back to Blackman to tell him that the number 4 engine was now leaking oil. Once again, Blackman feathered the number 4. Now flying on 2 engines, Blackman struggled to hold the fortress in the air. Limping westward, the crew were sitting ducks for the fighters. Without fighter escort, they became easy prey for the 2 Focke-Wulf 190s. 20mm cannon shells peppered the dying B-17. The crew did their best to bail out of this now burning fortress. However, 4 members of the Blackman crew were killed as they fell victim to the intense German fighter attacks. The savage fighter attacks of the Luftwaffe was astounding. Their total disregard for flying through their own flak barrage was simply beyond belief. Where were our fighters? Where were the little friends? Due to the wind change and the miscalculation of the rendezvous time, the 100th Bomb Group was unescorted. When American fighters finally did show up, it was too late. However, the 352nd Fighter Group and the 355th Fighter Group did come and try to counter the attack. 2 pilots who achieved victories that day were Captain Don Bryan and Major J.C. Meyer of the 352nd Fighter Group. In the low squadron, things were no better for 2nd Lieutenant Leo Ross and his crew. At 12:30, Ross's aircraft, Forever Faithful, was relentlessly attacked by German fighters. Ross dropped out of formation, leveled the crippled fortress off, but soon lost control of the aircraft. Mercifully, the crew all bailed out before the aircraft crashed near Bartelsdorf, Germany. Also in the low squadron was Second Lieutenant Charles Webster and his crew. Webster was also flying along with the Ross crew in the rear element of the low squadron. Webster's ship was hit by fighters just after making the turnoff of the bomb run. Fighters ripped Webster's fortress to shreds with 20mm shells. The crew struggled to get out of the airplane. Lieutenant Webster and his co-pilot Virgil White left the controls of their flight deck. Both were donning their parachute equipment on when they were both hit by enemy fire. Both Webster and White died instantly. In the heat and the stress of combat, remarkable things can happen. Feats of courage and valor are achieved. The test of human endurance is challenged, but no more so than on this day, December 31st, 1944. One of the most remarkable stories about the 100th Bomb Group occurred that day, the famous piggyback incident. As the low squadron lost aircraft, two pilots simultaneously adjusted their formation position to tighten up with the rest of the group and keep the integrity of the combat box intact. First Lieutenant Glenn Rojan, flying in B-17 42-31987, named the Little Skipper, and First Lieutenant William McNabb, flying in B-17 G-43-38547, jockeyed for the same position. As both of the pilots steered towards the same formation slat, they collided. McNabb's aircraft flying below Rojan's fortress suddenly locked together when the top turret guns of McNabb's aircraft pierced the aluminum belly of Rojan's ship. McNabb and his co-pilot, the bottom aircraft, were crushed instantly. Rojan and his co-pilot, Second Lieutenant William Leake, desperately tried to separate the airplanes, but none of their maneuvers worked. Rojan looked out the side of the window of his ship and saw McNabb's B-17 firmly attached. The engines from both aircraft continued to turn. However, Rojan now noticed that his number 4 engine was slamming into the nacelle of McNabb's number 4 engine. Rojan immediately feathered all the engines to avoid an explosion. Now running only on McNabb's engines, Rojan and Leake miraculously turned the two airplanes back towards Germany and safely over land. Using rudder control, they slowly turned the locked fortresses around. They knew that their fate was near. Leake ran the bailout bell, and the remaining crew jumped for their lives. Rojan and his co-pilot fought to keep the two aircraft level. They were losing altitude at a rapid pace. The only escape was the door that was located near the tail of the airplane. If either one left the controls, the airplane would simply roll over into a death spin. Rojan ordered Leake to bail out, but Leake wouldn't leave his seat. By now, the remaining crew all had bailed out except for one, the ball turret gunner on Glenn Rojan's airplane. Staff Sergeant John Russo was trapped inside the ball turret. With all their might, the Rojan crew members tried to free this trapped gunner, but it was no use. Co-pilot Leake quoted, "The last thing I heard from Sergeant Russo was him quietly saying Hail Marys, and I didn't feel like I should interrupt him." Finally, the two aircraft slammed into aircraft was jettisoned loose from McNabb's airplane and slid on its belly. Rojan finally coming to a complete stop. Rojan and Leake both walked away with hardly a scratch. Sergeant Russo was killed immediately on impact. The events of December 31st, 1944 was one of the 100th Bomb Group's darkest days. 12 Square D bombers were lost that day. Dozens of young men perished. However, it was another day to the testament of the valor and bravery in this long legacy of the 100th Bomb Group. The actions and courage of the 100th Bomb Group crews that day was nothing unusual. They stood on the example of such 100 bomb group men as Gail Klebb, Robert Rosenthal, John Egan, Owen Cowboy Rowe, Jack Kidd, Tom Jeffrey, and all of you. The courage that day was just a footprint in the long journey of the 100th Bomb Group, a journey that cost many lives, so many lives. But through their sacrifice, the ultimate victory against the greatest tyranny the world has ever witnessed was finally achieved. Their courage and determination protected our nation's freedom. May their sacrifice never be forgotten. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. God bless the 100th Bomb Group. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to bring up the co-pilot of the Mickish crew to tell some tales in regards to the December 31st mission. I'd like to introduce Mr. Ralph Christensen. Can you come up here, Ralph? The gentleman I'd like to bring up is Mr. Grant Fuller, who was flying the lead airplane on December 31st, 1944. Grant was the formation commander, the formation officer, and sat in the tail, watching over all you guys on that fateful day. Thank you. Lastly, this man needs absolutely no introduction, but I will. Mr. Charles Hong Kong Wilson. He was the lead pilot in the High Squadron, the B group that day. He is one of our favorites. I'd like to introduce Mr. Charles Martin, the mission command pilot of this famous mission on December 31st, 1944. There's no script to this. We planned nothing. I think these guys knew this was coming at them, and I'm just going to throw some underhand questions basic to you guys, and we would just like to hear your comments. Let's start with Grant. Just tell us a little bit about what you saw.
I saw a bunch of airplanes behind me.
I can imagine.
We got over there pretty fast. You know, we had that tailwind of 140 miles helps your ground speed considerably. So when we turned on the bomb run, because of the crosswind, the 140-mile crosswind, why our speed across the on the bomb run was only about 110, 120 miles an hour ground speed, so it was a very slow process. And so what I saw mostly was flat. With a slow, long bomb run, the flat gunners had plenty of times to level in on us, and they really did. And that was probably the slowest, most frightening bomb run I was ever on.
You know, we and Americans should be extremely proud of ourselves. If we'd have lost this war, we'd have been speaking Spanish or English, or not English, but German and Chinese. Let's think about it. We're a lucky bunch of
Absolutely. Thank you, Paul. When you came back to Fort Babbitt's, the 31st of December, 1944, you lost 12 airplanes. Almost a third of the group was gone. Can you tell us what it was like at the base that night after such an appalling loss to the group?
Well,
if it wouldn't have been for the booze, it would have been real lonesome. But when we did get back, the food was gone, the booze was there, so we handled that. But there was thoughts of Moran on our left wing going down, and Billy Blackman on our right wing. And I talked to Billy last week. He is still in Green Valley, just south of Tucson in Arizona, retired. He's got a water leg or some plumbing problem that he can't come to the reunion anymore. But he and his wife still living alone. And this is the memory that I have of good things that have happened. So many good things have happened. I got to tell you about when I left for the service.
I'd just like to add that was the most exciting New Year's I ever spent.
I can see that. So, and I say to all the second generation people of my age, I think you know this, but cherish these times, cherish these moments, cherish these gatherings, because they're just not going to happen much longer. That goes without saying.
Thorpe Abbott Airfield is located 106 miles northeast of London, near the village of Diss. It was built during 1942 and early 1943 for the RAF, but the rapid buildup of the 8th Air Force resulted in the airfield being handed over to the Americans. It became operational in June 1943 when the 100th Bomb Group took possession. It had hard stands for 50 B-17 bombers, a control tower, 2 hangars, flight crew huts, and domestic sites for other base personnel. The airbase became inactive after the 100th left in December of 1945. It remained inactive until April 1956 when it was decommissioned. The land was then returned to Sir Rupert Mann, the owner, and reverted to agriculture. In 1976, a group of local residents felt it was important to honor those who had sacrificed so much to help protect them. They approached the owner of the air base, and he agreed and gave the land to restore the control tower and create a museum. In 1977, an enthusiastic group of volunteers started working to restore the control tower. It was dedicated and opened in May of 1981. They have continued to work on other buildings and assembling the museum collections to this day. June 6, 2009, 100th Bomb Group veterans and the English people assembled to remember D-Day 65 years ago. The Stars and Stripes are still waving over a little piece of England at Thorpe Abbott's Air Base.
We'll meet again, don't know where, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day. Keep smiling through, just like you always do, till the blue skies drive the dark clouds far away. So will you please say hello to the folks that I know? Tell them I won't be long. They'll be happy to know that as you saw me go, I was singing this song. We'll meet again, don't know where, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day. We'll meet again, don't know where, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.